that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, now made by Disney, or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. And today, I'm so happy, I'm so excited. I'll be honest, going to the Bantam era was fun, but this was, I'm glad I got to reread these. I decided to switch it up a bit, so today I'm talking about Young Jedi Knights, but only the first 3 books in the series. The first 6 books follow the Shadow Academy arc, so I'll call this the Shadow Academy arc Part 1, or something along those lines. But, yeah. This is a young adult series written by Kevin J. Anderson and his wife, Rebecca Moesta. I think that's how you say it. If I'm not, whatever, I don't give a crap. This is really good. This is definitely, besides Redemption, because that's, like, a legitimate, like, amazing piece of art. Like, recently, a good friend, Marcel, said, Kevin J. Anderson's the McDonald's of literature. But that doesn't apply to, Redemption, the comic, because that's legitimately, like a great piece of steak. Like, one of the most tastiest steaks you've ever had. Think of your favorite food, whatever, that's done really well. That's Redemption. So he has the capacity. So maybe it's like a great Mexican place that also sells burgers for those losers that go to a Mexican place but don't want Mexican food. But yeah, you could say that, I guess. But anyway, point being, Kevin J. Anderson, the GOAT. The GOAT. Personally, I love Kevin J. Anderson. But here again, a young adult series. So, is this as good as Jedi Apprentice or Jedi Quest? Personally, Jedi Apprentice is the peak of all things young adult fiction. But this is, to me, better than Jedi Quest, The Last of Jedi, those Boba Fett young adult books. Like, this is second, bar none. Absolutely incredible series. And of course, who do we follow? Well, the children of Han and Leia. We follow Jason and Jaina Solo. We had a couple stories. We had Crystal Star, the Corellian trilogy a bit. But the focus is truly and utterly the kids. The parents, Han and Leia, and even the teacher Luke are vastly more side characters than they've ever been before. That, and we get introduced to brand new characters that you're going to fall in love with, are going to be very important moving forward in the timeline. So starting with, we have book 1, which is Heirs of the Force. So, the basic plot of this first book, we get introduced to a lot of characters. Loey, which is the nephew of Chewbacca. We get introduced to Raynar, who's a student at the academy. We get introduced to Tino Ka. Now, this is very important, and this is what I mean, where the expanded universe, especially post-Endor, truly makes you feel fulfilled in spending your time on reading the expanded universe. Unlike some things, just so I can get another dig in there, like Bounty Hunter Wars, things that you read outside of that trilogy matter. Courtship of Princess Leia is the quintessential book, and getting to see Han and Leia finally tie that knot and get married. But guess what? It goes so far beyond that. Not only does it introduce the Dothraki people to us, it introduces us to the best female character in fiction, or one of my favorite female characters in all fiction, Tino Ka. Now, Tino Ka, for those of you who don't know, it's not a huge spoiler for this series or anything. I'm just telling you her lineage. She is the child of Tiniel Dojo, who is the Dothraki girl that tried to, be with Luke in Courtship of Princess Leia, and who was another big important character in that book, who was trying to pine after Leia in that book. Isildur, or Isildur, however the fudge you want to say his name. And guess what? Tino Dojo and him became a thing at the end of that novel. And now they have a child, Tino Ka, and that child will play an important role in the rest of this book series and moving forward. No matter how you feel about anything moving forward, NGO and onward, she is one of the most important characters in this series. She's like extremely important to everything. And she's awesome and wonderful. And that all, again, what a huge connection make. Courtship of Princess Leia, a one-off novel, is having a rippling effect years down the line with this series. I mean, when did I talk about Courtship of Princess Leia? Like months ago? And now here we are, getting filled, getting rewarded for having spent that time. Sure, you can still enjoy this series without having read Courtship of Princess Leia, but the utter satisfaction you get out of already knowing who Isildur is, knowing who Tino Dojo is, knowing that Tino Ka is the child of those two, it's incredible. It's great. That's the beauty of the expanded universe. Speaking of that, the big thing, what is the story of this first book in the arc? Well, all those friends, they go out and exploring the jungle of Yavin 4, because of course the training academy is on Yavin 4. They find a wrecked TIE fighter. They find an Imperial who's still alive. He's very old, but he's still alive. He doesn't know that the Empire's been defeated. Now, the fact that he never finds anybody on this planet after like 20 years is a little... okay. But guess what? Again, this is something the Expanded Universe does that I don't read the new canon, so you can tell me. But does the level of love and detail and dedication come into it as you see here? I mean, look at this. Listen to me. Listen to me. And I reviewed this story way back when I was back during the Rebellion era, after Episode 4. But before Episode 5, I talked about this comic. Those of you who've been watching all my videos, you'll remember. There's a comic, a very old comic, where Luke is fighting a TIE fighter that was near Yavin, and it crash lands on Yavin. And Luke has a chance to kill the Imperial, but doesn't, because he's around the same age as Luke, and so he lets him live. That is the same pilot. He ran off in that story. Never heard from him again. Well, here he is. He didn't die. He's been living in Yavin 4 all this time. Is it a little ridiculous that he never found anybody? Yeah, but what's really cool is the fact that it didn't need to exist. This connection didn't need to be a thing, but it is. Because the Expanded Universe writers, whether it be Kevin J. Anderson or others, they loved doing stuff like that. It didn't need to be him. It could have been anybody, but there chose to be that connection. And so, eventually they kind of befriend him a little bit, sort of, kind of, and then he bails, where he will later on go to meet an important thing that will be the main antagonist of the next 5 books. But that's pretty much it for book 1. And I also think it's a little hard to determine here is the fact that the timeline here is a little weird, because if this I am placing it after the Hand of Thrawn. However, the way things are worded here, it could be before Hand of Thrawn, because they don't talk about the Empire necessarily as an ally anymore, like this neutral faction. Though again, if you read the Fool's Bargain short story, which focuses on those 501st Stormtroopers of the Hand, they're going after warlords. So there could potentially still be some of those warlords out there. I don't know. Point being, it is vague enough to where the Empire could still be around in like a negative fashion. But I'm placing here. I feel it's the best place to put it. So we're going to do that. Then we move on to Book 2, The Shadow Academy. And what do you know? Jaina, Jason, and Lobaka get kidnapped, because Jaina and Jason get kidnapped so often, but they get kidnapped again at this shadowy academy where they learn the ways of the dark side. And who is the leader of this academy? Oh, well, of course. Again, we got Brachus. Now, I don't know if this is where he's introduced, but it really doesn't matter. The fact is, if you're reading in chronological order, you have seen Brachus twice. You saw Brachus in I, Jedi, which means that he was a part of the Jedi Academy trilogy, even if we didn't see him, which is way early on. And he was in the New Rebellion, where he was kind of a lackey to the main bad guy of that series, or that book, but regardless, he was still a bad guy. And here he is again. Again, if you read New Rebellion, again, that's a one-off novel. If you read I, Jedi, again, you are rewarded. You remember that character. You go, that guy, he's back, he's doing stuff. Again, that's how the EU works, and it's so great. And even if this is his first time appearing, which I don't remember publication-wise, but regardless, whether it be this first, something else first, regardless, you'll recognize the name and see the connections made. So regardless, that's really cool. But yeah, so, Jason and Jaina are being forced to do all these things. Same with Lobaka. Also, who's Brachus' second in command, Temeth Kai, which is an evil Dothmiri lady. So that's also fun. Meanwhile, on the flip side of that, we have Luke and Tino Ka trying to figure out where they went, and of course they go to Dothmere, and we get some mentions of the Court of Princess Leia stuff, and it's really cool. We get a lot more character development for Tino Ka, which will be a whole lot more of that moving forward in the series, especially in Book 4, but we'll get to that. And it's really good getting to see Luke and her interact. And of course, eventually, Jason and Jaina, they all escape, and they know that the Shadow Academy is now a threat. Book 3 is the last ones. Here we get introduced to a new character who will also be important, well, at least for this story arc especially, and will be around moving forward, which is Zek. Which I've only seen a little bit, sadly. I wish I hadn't, of Star Wars Rebels. But I know the main character, Ezra, people have compared him to the Aladdin of Star Wars. But there was a character that already existed that basically fills that same sort of role, which is Zek. Zek is, the kind of the street urchin, this street rat, as you would say. Now, we've conveniently never known about him before, but growing up on Coruscant, the rich Jason and Jaina, the privileged kids, they eventually became friends with this lesser rich kid, Zach. Actually, what's a weird connection I made while reading it was kind of like, Corey, and Sean from Boy Meets World. I kind of get a similar vibe to that. But so we got Zach, and he's, super poor guy, knows the lower levels of Coruscant and everything. But again, the Shadow Academy rears its ugly head and convinces Zek that, he should join the Shadow Academy. And he kind of becomes their spokesperson in this book, which is, oh no, because it's their friend. And that's pretty much it for this story, without getting into spoilers or anything. Also, they have like this cloaking technology, which again seems like a contradiction, because the whole big thing with Hand of Thrawn was the cloaking stuff not working. But I remember watching Matt Wilkins' video, and he also made an excellent point, which is, but all the people in the Empire in that book were normal people. They weren't Force sensitive, right? So it wouldn't work. But if you have a bunch of Force sensitives on board with the cloaking ship, then you could potentially get it to still work, because of the fact that they don't have to see, they can sense with the Force. So that was an interesting thing. But yeah, overall, I know I love this series. I remember loving it to pieces. It's what makes Star by Star so depressing to read. Get to that down the line, but these 3 books are great. I was going to do just the first 6 books, the Shadow Academy arc, but I thought, why not break it up? I mean, Matt Wilkins somehow broke up every single episode into videos, so, but I'm doing it this way, so that's pretty much it. Again, I still think the series is phenomenal, and I can't wait to keep reading more about these kids and their adventures, because it's some of the highlights of all the expanded universe. It is a series well worth your time and effort. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you don't want spoilers, now it's time to go. If you don't care about spoilers, Stick around. What do I have here? I don't really have too many spoilers, but I wanted to bring up, and I guess I just forgot to bring about it before, Jason's humor. Jason's humor. It is a big part of his character. Throughout all of these books, it never stops being a thing. No matter what he goes through, no matter who he is, he remains consistently the funny guy. Like, think like Marvel quips. Like, that is Jason. And again, people don't have a problem with Vector Prime. I'm sorry, but you are all hypocrites if you complain about Dark Nest. Jason is fundamentally, in every way, shape, and form, a different person in Vector Prime. If you don't see that, then you are reading a different story from me. You are willfully believing that it's all consistent for the sake of saying, "Oh, I'm not inconsistent. I can say that this works, but Dark Nest doesn't." No, Vector Prime Jason might as well be a clone. It's not the same person. But I accept that it is Jason because it's a phenomenal story, just like Post NJO is. Frick you. But the point being, Jason's humor is apparent throughout, and it's one of his most defining character bits is that he especially when things get tense, he tries to lighten the mood with a joke. And especially if he likes a girl, which we're going to do more later. It's something he likes to do. But this is one of the main reasons why me and Brennan are writing, a fan fiction set after Young Jedi Knights, but before Vector Prime, because I feel it's such a substantial thing that it needs to be explained. And maybe it won't be official, but at least you'll have some sort of story when it's done. And if you think it's good, you can accept it in your head canon of, what happened to Jason. Because growing up is not enough for me. Not in 6 months. I'm sorry. If Vector Prime took place like 5 years, 5 years after Young Jedi Knights, then maybe I could see your point, being like, well, a lot can happen in 5 years. But 6 months? Piss off. No. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Luke also talks about Brachus in this first book, which is really interesting. And just, helps kind of show Luke's mindset about him and everything. And I think it's really cool. And then for book 2, which is the Shadow Academy, there were some subtle comments on patience. Jason's big thing in this book is he really wants to start using a lightsaber. Because, that's what cool Jedi do, right? They use lightsabers. And Luke, being the kind, wise uncle, has this subtle conversation with him about patience. And it's never explicitly stated, but, it's because he understands, because how did we get introduced to Luke? He found his life as a moisture farmer boring, and he wanted to do more exciting things. And then he got his wish. But patience is also good. And I thought that was fun. And by this book, you can, if you didn't catch it before, you've caught it now. Jason has a huge crush on Tino Ka. And it's adorable, and it's great, and it builds up for all these books, all the way up into the Diversity Alliance, where you clearly see that they have that chemistry, and then by the time of, the end of the series, like, they're together. And it's such a well-built up relationship, as opposed to Danny Quee in Vector Prime. Lose her character, piss off. But yeah, it's an adorable crush, and I love reading about it. Hapes and Dathomir. I don't know if I've ever really commented on it before, but I think it's ingenious that Tino Ka as a character exists. Not only because of all the things she's going to go through and her character as a person, but just Dathomir and Hapes are both female, oriented, dominated societies, right? And that's what kind of makes the brainchild of Isildur and Tino Dojo make so much sense with Tino Ka. The only difference really is that Hapes is more about political power, and the woman being on top of men, whereas Dothamir's more of that primal, barbaric sort of, no, you know what I mean, like tribal sort of. Yes, we women are in charge. You men submit, but it's still they're vastly different in terms of culture, technology, and all that, and yet also so very similar. So the fact that we get a child from both is amazing, and I just have to comment how brilliant of a move like just Tino Kaw's existence is. Um, we also get in this book, as I said, a lot of Tino Kaw focus because her and Luke are looking for um, kids. Brachus. Brachus is great here. Before in Nine Jedi, it was kind of the questioning Jedi, and then here, and then in New Rebellion, he was kind of this whimpering, questioning, subordinate to the main bad guy, cooler. But here, he's the main antagonist, and he's really great as it, and seeing the evolution of his character in chronological order, I think, is really cool and interesting to see. And then, just to piss off everybody, Jason versus Jaina the first time. Now I know this was not intended. This was written way before Legacy of the Force, and a lot of people dislike Legacy of the Force. But if you like it, and if you take it this way, it's not foreshadowing at all, because this was not the intention. But with hindsight, it can be seen as foreshadowing, and it's immaculate. So Brachus forces Jason and Jaina to fight, but tricks them because they're in holograms. But it could have been anybody, right? It could have been anybody. Could have been Emperor Palpatine. Could have been, I don't know, Exar Kun. Could have been, I don't know, Darth Maul. I mean, yeah, Darth Maul didn't exist at the time that this was, written. But, in lore, it could have been Darth Maul. Could have been Grievous. Could have been this or that, or any of the freaking Ulic Quodroma in the Tales of the Jedi era. Could have been a large number of things. Could have been a monster. Could have been anything. But it ends up being Jason looks like Darth Vader. And so Jane has to fight Darth Vader. And then they realize that they're fighting each other. Now again, wasn't the intention. But knowing the future and using that as foreshadowing, that's poetic. That is amazing. If you read into it like that. Jason and Jaina fight for the first time, not because they want to, because they're forced to, which you could argue they still are in that future series. And Jason, it could have been Jaina too. Jaina could have looked like Darth Vader, and Jason had to fight Jaina like that. But Jaina's the one that saw Darth Vader, and it was on Jason. Sane man. If you like that stuff, if you like post New Jedi Order, then this scene, because otherwise it's just like a cool little scene. But if you add that meaning, dude, you can make this scene have so many more layers in retrospect. And it's great. It's a great scene regardless, but think about it. Think of how much more this scene can mean if you just stop being stupid and enjoy stuff. Moving forward, what else do we got? Book 3. The salad scene. Felt so bad for Zach. Now, I think all of us at one point or another in our lives can think about like a really embarrassing moment we've had. So Zach is not one for high society, but he gets invited to this thing because Jason, Jaina, and he eats a bouquet. He's a nice salad, and everybody's like, "That's embarrassing," and that's you. Again, this is written for kids, but you could feel that. You could feel how embarrassing that is, and it really sucks. But we all can also like think of a moment in our lives where something like that has happened, where we get embarrassed. But I really felt for Zach in that scene. And then Brachus's speech to Zach makes perfect sense. Zach's like a teenager here. It makes perfect sense why Brachus's speech would work, why it would convince, Zach to join his side. And I think it works really well. And then the big revelation at the end of this. Emperor Palpatine is alive? He didn't die in Dark Empire, or is it a trick? What is it? I don't know. I mean, I do know, but you have to read the following books to find out. But that's the big twist, is Brachus has been talking to Emperor Palpatine. Is he actually? Don't know. But that's pretty much it. We got 3 more books, I think, of the Shadow Academy arc, and then the Diversity Alliance, and then Black Sun, and the Junior Jedi Knights with Anakin Solo. So I hope you all join me for that. Until next time, guys. May the Force be with you.